Hello, my name is Jordan Michael, and for my portfolio project, I will be discussing my experience at the Autry Museum of the American West, also known as the Autry Museum. I was able to visit this past week during Thanksgiving break. Uh, it is currently located in Griffith Park, Los Angeles, and has been in operation since 1988. Here is the museum itself. Personally, I live in Glendale, California, which is only around 10 or 15 minutes away from the museum, but I've never taken the opportunity to visit and see what it has to offer. Uh, it was originally co-founded by Jackie and Gene Autry and Joanne and Monty Haley, but most notably is Gene Autry. Gene Autry was a singer, musician, and actor who was best known for performing on radio stations and television beginning in the early 1930s through the 1960s. He was also nicknamed the Singing Cowboy during this time. His co-founding of the Autry Museum was both a dream of his and a tribute to Western history. During my tour of the museum, I was shown a variety of exhibits featuring various cultures and movements that have had a prominent impact on both California history and the American West. I'd first like to start off with the first gallery presented, which was the George Montgomery Gallery. At the time I visited, a special exhibit was being held called When I Remember, I See Red: American Indian Art and Activism in California. This exhibit focused on the culture and story of Native American history and placed a large overall emphasis on the impact made by incoming Europeans of the 18th century. And as we've learned throughout earlier class lectures, the Europeans had a very big negative impact on the Native American population. One of the pieces of art I found most profound regarding Native American culture was a piece titled Maidu Walk, which was created by Dalbert Castro in 1980. This piece of art depicted the forced relocation of the Maidu and Atsugewi people of California to the Red Valley or Cabello Indian reservations. This occurred in 1862 and caused around 45 or more deaths during this time. The art piece depicts several of these people during the long walk, as well as a white man looking over them as they march. This art piece interested me as it was extremely similar to the well-known Trail of Tears, in which tens of thousands of Native Americans were killed during the walk from 1830 to 1850. There is also the registration book for Alcatraz, which details one of the first movements of Native American activism. In 1969, 89 Native Americans called Indians of all tribes stayed in a former prison on Alcatraz Island and attempted to justify living on that island claiming the land. They occupied the land for 19 months and brought awareness to Native American issues, such as lack of representation, discrimination, and most importantly, violation of treaty rights. The book that was provided at the museum showed evidence of the signatures of those 89 Native Americans and their occupation. These two museum pieces were just a couple of the various types of artwork, artifacts, and literature that were provided regarding Native American culture and history. The next exhibit, called the Irene Helen Jones Parks Gallery, featured artifacts and art pieces from both Hispanic culture and overall Western culture. The artifacts showcased were those that mainly impacted California culture, however, they were still interesting to look at. Posters of silent films were shown, as well as sculptures and models of Western culture, mainly cowboys. One painting that stood out as Hispanic origin to me was called The Tears of the Lord, which showed a Hispanic depiction of the death of Jesus Christ. According to the museum's description of the piece, it is supposed to show how state-sponsored religion can influence indigenous culture. It features Christ nailed to an Aztec-style cross as a group of Hispanic individuals gather around his feet in traditional dress, showing what seems to be indifference towards Christ. I agree with the sentiment that state-sponsored religion can influence indigenous culture as shown here. Another painting that is very recognizable and was once utilized in class lecture is called The American Progress, which is essentially a depiction of Manifest Destiny. I was surprised to see it at this museum. Created by John Gast in 1872, it portrays a woman at the center of a group of American travelers, who is meant to be a personification of the United States. It is also used to reflect the idea that God has called on the settlers to move and expand westward. As a few of the exhibits had been closed off, my tour ended at the bottom floor. However, this area focused on several artifacts and items utilized within the past 2 centuries. It focused on events such as the Gold Rush, saloons and gambling, and guns, including one from Annie Oakley, who was an entertainment sharpshooter that was featured in the Buffalo Bills Wild West show during the late 1800s. The Gold Rush section featured a brief description about the discovery of gold in 1848 in the Sierra Nevada, as well as examples of California gold ingots and jewelry made from the gold. The saloon and gambling sections featured a Western-style bar, a roulette table, a poker table, and playing cards used during the time period. Another interesting section was the featuring of Native American items. This included purses, knives, textiles, and footwear, mainly moccasins. What interested me most was the salmon club, a tool used during the fishing of salmon, which was essential for the practice of holding salmon dances and ceremonies to thank the salmon for the fruitful season and ask for their return the following year. These are just a few of the items shown on this floor. There are a variety of items, actually. Thank you. My experience at this museum was extremely rewarding as I learned more about Western history and my own state's history from the past 2 centuries. I was also able to finally visit this museum with my family after living nearby for almost my whole lifetime. It was also enlightening to connect some of the imagery and artifacts I saw to class lectures that we've had previously. Thank you for listening to my presentation and have a great day.